I think Riggs is about the only one else in here.
Hmm.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, Bendy Space left a while ago, I think.
I stay up way too late, so
I've been trying to go to bed earlier, but sometimes I mess up.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you guys want to talk about regarding the shape of the Earth?
I'm a big fan of the Aether. That's kind of my favorite subject to talk about.
I don't really know much. I know that there was a proposed Aether and that there's a Michelson-Morley experiment which disproved it, but I don't know how it was disproved, or what the Aether was. I can't. Yeah.
Well, they made false assumptions about the Earth and what the ether would be, and that's literally the only reason they came back with a negative result.
Okay.
So
basically, on its face, when they tell you Michelson-Morley debunked the Aether, well, it's literally a straw man of what our position is today, where we weren't asserting a static ether. They thought a static ether with the Earth moving through the ether, where
Mhm.
we think the Earth is stationary and the ether is dynamic. It's moving.
Do you have an experiment that could prove or disprove the Aether?
What
All
is
of
the
laser
ether?
interferometry.
What is ether, anyways? Can you explain it? I don't understand it.
Well, so anyway, to answer the dude's question first, all of laser interferometry would be considered a proof of ether.
Mhm.
You'd have to look into that again. The space audits, fantastic presentations on there. I can post a really short, YouTube short, 60 seconds of Bennett explaining laser interferometry, real quick. It's a good little one by him.
I would just
But as
like
far
to
as
add
what
one.
ether is, yeah, I think it's everything. It's what matter consists of. It's also light itself. If you ever heard people, well, matter is just really high density light or whatever. Well, yeah. Well, light is ether. Light is a perturbation of ether. You can think of it like the same as a sound wave in the air. Nikola Tesla called a radio tower an ether whistle.
Mhm.
I would just caution. Look, I also am an ether believer, but I have to use the word belief because if you start talking about a scientific experiment, you need an independent variable and a dependent variable, and you need to prove the null or prove that you can actually manipulate said substance, or if you can remove the substance and demonstrate that it no longer can do what it's supposed to do with that
Or
substance.
you need to have something that it does that literally can't be done by anything else, right? So you need to measure an
That's
interaction.
the dependent or independent variable, and then by doing the null, you would actually prove that you'd prove the causation of that type of effect. From a just a purely logical standpoint, I 100% agree with angling alchemy. The same way that if you take a vacuum chamber and you remove all the air, there's no sound propagation. So sound can only propagate if there's the medium of air for the sound to propagate through. Now, the greats like Heaviside and Maxwell and all the guys who were working in magnetism and field theories postulated that there had to be some kind of a background medium for these waves to propagate through, in the same way that a wave propagates through water. So we actually visually see the wave, but there has to be a medium on which that wave is traveling. But from a scientific standpoint or a scientific experiment standpoint, we've never found an experiment whereby we can remove or manipulate the ether. And thereby, it's not a scientific proof, because scientific proof is cause and effect, not what is questions. So you have to prove cause and effect through a scientific experiment, and we can't manipulate the cause of ether. So it's a nuanced question, but like I say, I 100% agree there has to be a medium, but as flat earthers, we've got to kind of be a little bit careful about saying that it's scientifically proven, or that that wave theories and those kind of things prove this medium. But the idea that there isn't a medium is also illogical, because we know that wave propagation needs to happen through a medium. And that's when, like the Michelson-Morley and those guys, they were trying to determine the speed of the Earth through the ether. They found a zero value, that there is no speed, and therefore concluded there is no ether. Now, that's not logical. That just means you didn't determine a speed. It doesn't mean that there is no background medium. But
No,
yet,
they were looking for either 0 or 30, and they got 6, I think. And so 6 didn't fit anything. And so, because of the parameters of the experiment, that was why they got 6 instead of.
but yeah,
I'm trying to
correct.
remember the details about that. I know exactly what you're talking about, and also
And
about I'm going to
that
post something about
30,
the ether in the chat.
but
Yeah.
that 30 was also a bit flawed initially, because it's what the globe model always tries to do, is they look at one motion independently. So they say, all right, what is the rotational speed of the Earth? We know, in inverted commas, that the radius is 3959. We know the diameter. Therefore, the Earth must be spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. But that's, again, assumption based on assumption based on assumption to generate a speed of 1,000. But yet the Earth is also said to be moving around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. But yet the sun is also traveling at 2 million miles per hour. And then the galaxy is moving at half a million miles per hour. So if we start accumulating or adding together all of those speeds, the speed of the Earth through the ether should have been like 10,000 and not 30. But if we just want to look at the isolated figure of the Earth spinning, then we should read 30 or 30 degrees per hour on a ring laser gyro. But yet we're now excluding the supposed speed of the Earth traveling around the sun. And again, how do we get to the speed of the Earth traveling around the sun? It's not measured, it's assumptive based. So we say the Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun. Again, that figure has changed over the last 200 years. But right now, it's presumed to be 93. So that's the radius. So then we calculate the circumference using that radius, divide that by 365 days in a year.
Well, I mean,
and then we have a presumed speed
Not-
that the Earth should be traveling around the sun. But it's
not
not a
necessarily, because,
measured
like, I mean,
speed.
No,
This is how they get the speeds.
well,
This
they
is how they
can't.
get the
I mean,
rotational speed.
you couldn't do it like that, because you're traveling different speeds. For example, you're traveling faster at the periapsis than at the apoapsis, and it's not perfect circle. It's an ellipse.
Not measured. So it's
Hmm?
presumed to be traveling faster at the periapsis, but it's not a
Well,
measured.
no, it has to be traveling faster at the periapsis, because of orbital mechanics. It's because, like,
It's not
you're
measured.
closer.
The point is, it's not
It's not.
measured. It's calculated, and
Mhm,
calculations is numbers on paper. Measurement is what we flat earthers are trying to find.
mhm. I mean,
So
yeah.
I can calculate, like, I've got $10 million, and now I get another $10 million. So therefore, I have $20 million. Do I
But
have $20 million? No, I don't. So
if your
there's a
calculation is based off of,
calculation.
if the basis of the calculations are true, then
What?
the
How would
conclusion
you
will be true.
determine the basis of your calculation is accurate
Well,
if it's
by
never been
taking
measured?
measurements. No, but cool,
Uh,
because you start with
never been
measurements. You can start by measuring the distance to the sun, through what's the term where you get the angle of and you form like a triangle or whatever, and then you, like, I can't remember the name of it. But you,
Okay,
like,
so
measure,
for,
you,
for
like,
interest's sake, go and look at the measurements towards the sun, and try and understand that if the base of your pyramid or your base of your triangle is infinitely small, you can't do that calculation. So then we take a presumed distance to Venus, and then we use the distance between Earth and Venus as the base of our triangle. So now, if your presumed distance to Venus is not accurate, is your triangle accurate? No. And that's why the distance to the sun has moved from 40 million miles to 60 million miles to 80 million miles to 105 million miles and then back down to 93 million miles. It's never been measured as in we bounced a laser beam off the sun and it traveled back to the earth and we calculated the time delay. And again, that would also have to presuppose what the medium is that it's traveling through and the speed that that light would have to travel through those said mediums. And if there's any kind of particle dust in between, could that slow down the medium?
Yeah. So what that seems
So
like
all of these are
it seems
based on
absurd.
assumptions. And as you add more variables to a calculation and presupposed variables to a calculation, can you really stand on that calculation as being accurate
Well,
if it's never
for me-
once been measured?
For me, it seems absurd to to request like a measurement because it's like what are you going to do? Sit on the sun with the speedometer and watch the Earth fly by? It's like it's how could you possibly measure it, right? Like yeah, so you have to get
100% agree, but your rebuttal was as long as you've got a reliable measurement, then your calculations are accurate. My point is that we have no reliable measurement in any of these calculations.
and
Even
I guess
like
that
the
is
speed of light.
and that is where I think
The
actually
speed of light is not a constant. The speed of light's not a constant because as it's traveling through different mediums, you generate different speeds. So
well, I mean,
when they look at the different speeds of light, they generate an average, and that becomes C that we use for all calculations.
No. C is light in a vacuum. And then the speed of light doesn't actually change, but the distance it travels changes based on the like because the wavelength gets shortened to a different medium. But that's a different thing.
That's
but
assumption. You see like a measurement that the light becomes slower, and you just assume that he travels more distance. You don't know that actually.
wouldn't it be you can like see the wavelength change because the wavelength also determines right the like the color of the light. And so if you place like a detector inside that medium, you can see that the the type of light, right, the color, the wavelength changes because you can see the wavelength, by observing the and so we've seen that
You can't see the wavelength. You can take
well,
a
you can tell what wavelength is. You can tell what wavelength is based because I mean, the wavelength is what determines what type of light it is, whether it's gamma radiation or red light or blue light or infrared or whatever. That's so
but
when
that
the wavelength
but that
changes,
again
changes the type
but that
of light.
again but that again is it's rendered through another piece of equipment which then generates that spectrum or that wavelength pattern for us to visually see it. So for example, you're using another computer to register the beam of light, and then that computer is outputting a graph for you so you can visually see what that wavelength would be or the banding pattern, the frequency distribution of that said wave. But again, each of these are pre-programmed with set assumptions. So from like even on take gravity for example, there's different areas of the earth which tend to have variations in gravity, so they take an average and generate the average and then they call the average G. And the same thing with light. If light were truly a constant, it would travel constantly through any medium, but it doesn't travel constantly through any medium. So even the presupposition that
and that's the part I disagree with because it
constant, because it's also a presupposition that space is a vacuum. You can't have high pressure next to low pressure or infinite vacuum without some kind of solid barrier. We know that it's the second law of thermodynamics. So you cannot have high pressure next to low pressure without some kind of physical, tangible barrier preventing the one from dispersing into the other.
And again,
but the presupposition that space is a vacuum, again, is an assumption. Then the speed of the light through that assumptive medium is another assumption. Then the distance it's traveling is another assumption. And then we do a calculation with 7 assumptions and presume our outcome is accurate. That's just flawed.
Well, the thing is, like the speed of light so space is a vacuum. I mean, I think we've been to space, so I mean, you can kind of tell if you've been there. You can't breathe; there's no air. But
But we don't need to use space. We can use a vacuum chamber. We can tuck in all this stuff, and then throw a beam of light through it, and then we can see that when it's not touching anything.
Why would you presume that we've been to space? Because you saw something on TV.
Yeah, well, because I just think it's less likely that they're all lying to us.
Yeah, but
it
that's
actually
fallacy
happened.
of authority. Just saying.
No. I just think it's less likely that everything's a lie than.
Do you think that we went to the moon?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like I said, I can't prove that. I can't verify that. I just don't.
Why would you believe it then?
Because I don't think I think, like I said, I think it's less likely that we are all being lied to and that it's all like a sham.
The government
than it
has
just
lied
happened.
to us like multiple times. Like their projects, like they tried to test some chemicals on citizens to brainwash them. Like,
MK Ultra.
yeah, exactly. And they're like, I don't know, 200 more, and just like this one. And you're saying that they didn't take the moon landing.
I'm saying.
What was the chances,
Okay.
man? Like, what's it like? Even in governments throughout history, every time they're doing something bullshit, like the communists.
Well, also I
everybody
like with
doing
the,
something
the
bullshit.
moon landing. I don't know how they could have faked it. Like I think that it's what we've got. The photos and the videos and.
Have you ever watched?
I don't think you can fake that.
Have you ever watched The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon? By
I
Bart
just want
Bro?
to. Yo, Flatter Solar. Wait, I want to tell him something. So
No, he just said that he can't think how it could be faked, and there's actual video evidence of how it was faked. It's called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon" by
I'll
Bart
check that out.
Bro. It's marvelous because it's actual NASA footage of how they were faking the distances that they were traveling in their supposed video film that they made of their moon landing. And every single breakdown, if you start to actually inquire into the moon landing, you will see probably 4,000 pieces of evidence that show that it was absolutely faked.
Mm-hmm.
And the director of that film was Stanley Kubrick, who did 2001 Space Odyssey, and he was flown to NASA with JPL and with Walt Disney. And right at the time where they were supposedly doing the moon landing, Stanley Kubrick and all these guys who are film directors were part of the management team in terms of how to create a film that looked relatively believable. Then they shot the video off of a television screen so it would be more grainy so that people wouldn't be able to look for certain things. Like, there is just so much evidence. And again, like I said to you, the fallacy of believing that no one's ever lied to you. I promise you, your mother has lied to you. Your brother has lied to you. Your uncles and aunties, everyone who's close to you, who values you, has probably lied to you at some point. The government is demonstrably a lying institute. They only tell the sheep what they need to know for the government to have their own benefit out of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept that a government who doesn't know you, doesn't care about you, could not lie to you is a fallacy in itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find it more useful in everyday life to generally not just doubt for the sake of like doubt. For example, I could like go and be like Descartes and think everything's fake. I'm being tricked by an evil demon, and I can only say that I am the only thing that can truly be verified that exists. But I just don't find that to be a useful view. I mean, you could say that
but it is
everyone knows
realistic
lying to
view.
you.
It cannot be useful, but it is real. It is actually what happens.
So when
You
a
can
when
do
a
it
car
or not.
salesman, when a car salesman's trying to sell you a car, he would never lie to you because it's more convenient to just believe everything he says. Correct?
No, I'm saying it's more convenient to have a basis level of trust with just the world and the things
With
that
everyone, including
No,
car
he's
salesmen.
making a really good point. It's a really good point. It's the difference between solipsism and then philosophical realism. and it was actually ended up being like the bow tie on top of a debate between two physicists, where PhD physicist Robert Bennett and then Robert Parks had a fundamental disagreement on what the definition of dynamics was, and they came to the conclusion that it was their interpretation of that definition and that philosophical reason that they made the decision, not scientific. And I thought that was really interesting that you just brought that up, where you're like, well, I have to believe certain things, you know,
Oh, yeah, yes,
and
yes.
I have
Well,
to recognize that I can know and understand things, you know,
yeah,
and that, yeah,
I've never heard that, but yeah, my point is that like, though technically, I mean, it is valid to say that everything could be fake and you can only verify yourself. I think therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. But it is more useful for me as a human to have some level, to just have a basic level of trust that the world exists. That in general people don't lie like for no reason. I mean, obviously there are liars, there are scam artists and whatever, but I don't find it useful to doubt everything, and so I do trust the scientific institutions. Now, it may
Yeah.
be the case that they're lying, but but like what I've learned, right? The information we get from them has been functionally useful. I've never been told anything that has turned out to be functionally false. That has now there are some things like quantum mechanics and stuff that are I can't, they don't have a function in everyday reality. But there's no point in doubting that for me, and it's more so like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't assume lying.
Can I provide you with a quick scenario?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too hard to recognize, but if you were born in Germany, let's say like 19, probably 20s, but you're of military age in 1935 and 40s, a whole lot of that nation were convinced that that man was doing good for them, right? And so a whole bunch of souls basically just convinced by the authorities and by the glitz and the glamour of something working, just sold their lives down the river. So, I mean, what would I say? I'd say it'd be incumbent upon us as individuals enacting ourselves in the modern world, given that history repeats itself. I would sort of say that you should maybe be very cautious about like those little decisions that you make that add up to the big decision. Is one that sort of should be taken very carefully.
Society, right? The useful belief would be that that in the 1940s, right, that he is doing something good, because if you didn't believe that and you believe that it was all wrong, then you'd probably be like executed or like in silence. And so though it may have been false, the useful belief was that he was doing something good. That was what would not get you killed. Now,
so not getting killed is the priority in life. Okay, I guess so.
You
We're all gonna die one day, bro.
Name, you try to find the absolute truth. You don't try to find what fits you in the society and what is useful to your own personal being. You try to find the absolute truth. You understand?
I just want to use one word.
That line of argumentation is always going to have you bending as an individual towards the society. And if that society is immoral, then you too will also be immoral. And so there are consequences to it.
And obviously there's a difference between what is useful to believe, what is like, and what is true. But I find it to be unproductive to doubt everything. And
so I don't expect you to change your mind this evening, sir. Yeah. I'm just letting you know that this is a process that I jumped through. Sorry, the other gentleman, please go ahead.
I want to sum it up in one word. It's called discernment. So it's not about doubt, but it's about discerning truth from lies. So in exactly his example about Nazi Germany, at that time, some people were discerning that they didn't simply blindly follow the government. My example or analogy would be the financial system. Do you think the monetary system is got zero flaws in it, with built-in inflation and taxation and all these things that are there to ensure that you remain just above the poverty line for most of your lifetime? Do you think that? that the
No.
monetary system is perfect.
No.
So then that's a system given to us by these same individuals, the stock markets, and how they manipulate the stock markets to ensure that select individuals become super wealthy, and the average person who enters the stock market through ignorance and blindly following generally gets screwed. And then you take it to the next thing, like the educational system. Do you think the educational system is unflawed? That they're
No.
really teaching you how to manage debt, how to use credit facilities correctly, how to accumulate wealth so that you can become a millionaire like the top percentiles. Now, these are the same educational providers, or the people providing us with the monetary system, with the education system, with the health system, with all of these things. If you have discernment, it doesn't mean you have to doubt it, but you can look at it critically and decide, is it factually accurate or is it flawed? And it's that same discernment that we're asking you to apply to these physics discussions, not to doubt and throw everything out. I agree with you, there are functionally accurate things that we've been taught, but there are also functionally inaccurate things we are taught. And simply because some are functional doesn't mean we must assume all are functional. And the same way that some are not accurate doesn't mean we have to throw everything out as being inaccurate blindly. But to have the discernment to look at each thing individually and critically and come to your own conclusion about its validity or invalidity. And that's what we're trying to say here, is to look
Yeah.
at things with a critical eye and have your own discernment, not to say
Yeah.
the government wants the best for me. I'm going to trust everything from the monetary system, the education, their pharmaceutical
Oh, well,
advice,
of course.
and
But
all of their scientific
Mhm.
advice must be
But
100%
yeah.
accurate.
But I found that they the scientific data that they report, and like what they're in that department isn't like, there's no point in doubting it because it's as accurate as, I mean, like the laws of physics or whatever, as they report, is they've never been like wrong, and now I can't verify the more complex things, right, like quantum mechanics and whatnot. I mean, because I want to go into, like, I said this before, so until then I can't actually verify these things. But there's no point in doubting for the sake of doubt, because there's no way to
Oh, the laws of
prove them wrong.
physics have never been wrong?
Well, I mean, not like
What?
it's hard to explain, but like nothing that the scientific institutes have said has been wrong has been wrong from what I've like seen in my life. And so it's like, functionally, at least for me, it's true. It works in the world.
Can I ask you, how old are you?
15.
Okay.
Yeah, that would explain why, you see, young man. At 15, you've only had
15.
one decade. You've only had 1 decade, and you're halfway through your second decade of life. Okay, 15. Now you're talking to like someone like me, 63. I've had 60 decades. So there's no way you could know more than me at your little age at this point, because you don't have
Yeah,
the
but you got to let him make
experience.
his own mistakes, Jin. Like,
Absolutely
it's all
no.
right,
I'm not going to say that. Let me finish. Let me finish.
I
Let me
wasn't
finish.
asking questions
I'm
at
not putting
15.
him. I'm not putting him down. Let me finish, please. It's not meant to be derogatory here. What I'm trying to get him to understand is that he must understand, when somebody else is telling him something, obviously they would have experienced it. Of course, he has to experience it himself, and he will go and check. I'm just trying to let him know that with your 15 years, to say that science hasn't made any flaws or any mistakes, or now, that's not really good to say. That's a mistake there. Okay. But you will learn that in your own time. That's all I'm saying. I'll step out now because I don't want to upset anybody. There you go.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm saying science hasn't made any mistakes, but like, I mean, at least the current scientific narrative.
So my point that I was trying to make, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you there, was just that science is always on the pursuit of falsibility. That's
Yeah.
why there's a null hypothesis built into everything. And if any other scientist can prove someone else to be wrong and supersede their theory with a new theory, they do that. So science is always right until it's wrong, and then it's right again. And then it's always right until it's wrong, and then it's right again. Because there's always a new theory or a new band-aid applied over the previous hole. For example, Newtonian gravity was mass attracting mass. And in 1906, Einstein came out with a special theory of relativity and then postulated that it's actually the bending and warping of a space-time due to an uneven distribution of mass in the galaxy that's causing the gravitational effect. So right now, you'll often talk about Newtonian gravity, not knowing that that's already 100 years outdated, and that
Well,
if you're going to
so
refer to gravity,
what I mean by
you
mass
need to
fragment,
talk
because like,
about Einsteinian gravity.
well,
Until
Einstein was
now,
the theory of gravity.
in 2016, they postulated the electromagnetic universe. And most theoretical physicists are starting to work on an electromagnetic effect of gravity controlling what's happening with the planets, which could supersede Einsteinian gravity. So, what I'm trying to say is that gravity was considered Newtonian until it was proven false through certain orbital dynamics. And then Einstein postulated a space time continuum and the bending of a fabric of some medium which apparently doesn't exist because the ether doesn't exist. So, what is that fabric that's being bent? If there's a vacuum and there's no particles, there's no substrate, what is bending? Who knows?
Well, I mean,
Until the next guy
there are
postulates.
theories, right? You know,
So,
there's gravitrons and
like,
Higgs.
yeah, but those are just names for concepts. But I can call it the unicorn force. And I can say that the unicorn force is accountable for X, Y, Z. And you can't prove that the unicorn force doesn't exist.
And we're looking for it. I'm looking for the unicorn force too.
So what we're just trying to say is that, okay, in 15 years, you probably wouldn't have noticed these things that generally change every 40, 50, 60 years. And every time it changes,
But
it's proven that the previous one was false, but then there's a new one that replaces it. So now we're right again. So science is always in the pursuit of falsification. And once it's falsified, a new theory is supplied, and therefore that new theory is accurate. But the new theory is only accurate until it's falsified, and then a new theory is postulated.
Yeah.
So there's always a progression through science. So for you to stand today and say,
well, I'm not saying that we know everything,
proven,
but I'm not saying. But I'm saying is that, like, I mean, it's the best we have. It's like it's the best explanation that we have. And sure, there's always going to be a better. I mean, unless you're like
It's
God
not the
and
best.
you know
No, it's
everything
not
about
the best, sir.
everything.
It's not. It's the best at doing something. Like I'd like to put forward a proposition for you. Science is not what we were ever taught. Like from its instantiation, it was always an ideology, pretending to be, you know, what does science profess to be? Like a cosmological, like what
I
is it,
guess
observation of nature or something? Like
yeah, observations and like you know,
yeah,
or it's
I would
explanations.
posit,
It's explanations of nature.
sure. I'd posit that it was always set out to be a sort of form of propagandistic social engineering technique. Francis Bacon, the guy that made the science, was a lawyer, high up in the aristocracy, with the intent of you know, pushing and pulling people's minds and weaving ideas within the masses in order to have them behave in certain ways. The
And
one I mention quite
I
often
mean,
in these rooms is that he actually says that science, like the whole point of science, is to torment nature through artistic means in order for it to reveal, like for nature to reveal its secrets. So he's putting forward that science is actually a sort of form of a torture methodology to extract information and knowledge from the known world in order for man to sort of conquer it, essentially, which is problematic in my opinion.
Can I really quick interject because I have something to add on what you just said.
Go for it.
Am I coming through? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so Bacon wrote a book in 1624 which is called The New Atlantis. And it's a kind of a remedy for all social and how do I say it? He in his work it plays on an island. This island is called Ben Salem, and in this work he indirectly refers to an order of society. And
there is the so-called House of Solomon in this society, and this is a college of scientists, priests, who consecrate their lives to continuous scientific research in order to improve the human situation and make possible happiness understood in the concrete rather than in the transcendent. I don't know, yeah? But I think this just fits what you just said from what this Francis Bacon guy did.
His great
And
works was basically. Oh, sorry, you have more to add? Please go
yeah,
ahead.
just one more. And he uses a kind of metaphysical sun, which constitutes the father of the House of Solomon, where the scientists' priests are housed. Okay, so he also refers to the sun, and this can be interpreted further with heliocentric stuff, etc. But I digress. Okay, it's just everything I wanted to add right now. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to add
If I
things.
may,
I got heaps of
if
stuff
I
I can
may
talk about,
interject,
but
if I can,
go for
if
it,
I may
Jim.
interject. Thank you very much indeed. Young man, I'm not going to be long, maybe 2 to 3 minutes at the most. What I will say to you is this: first and foremost, time and time is a great teacher. Time and experience, okay, are great teachers in your life. You will learn that yourself. And I'll speak about myself, okay? I was born in 61. I went to elementary school at age of 7. I learnt about the globe. Now, at that moment, they didn't show me any proof of this globe. They just told me that. I carried those teachings on through secondary education, where it was reinforced through the cartoons I watched, the comics, magazines, news, science programs, corporate images, movies, and music. Okay, so it's been reinforced. No proof yet. Fast forward to 2015. I am now 53 years of age. 48 years have gone by since I learnt about the globe, and only to find out through my experiences, of course, with the documents that I watched, documentaries, that I've been in error for 48 years, carrying a belief from what the science classes that I had whilst I was growing up through elementary, college, university, and then, growing up and working. Okay. So that's what I'm going to say is that question everything you're being taught. That's my main advice.
Yeah,
Question and for proof. And I'm finished there. Thank you.
well, I like at my current age don't really have the ability to verify a lot of things. I mean, I can't go and look at like light rays and see this whatever. I can't measure the like the angle to the sun on this like triangle from different parts of the earth to like calculate the distance. But I mean I've done what I can. I did like the Cavendish experiment. I want to get a ring laser gyroscope and measure the rotation of the earth. But I plan on going into particle physics because I do want to verify the stuff for myself. Like I will trust it until I have the ability to verify it for myself. In which case I'll do that, and then I'll obviously I'll trust my own result over what the science says. If I get a for ring laser gyroscopes and it shows no rotation, then like I mean I'm not just gonna believe that the Earth's rotating. If I go into particle physics and I find that this isn't acting as the current paradigm says, then I'm not gonna just go along with it. But I will trust in general until I have the ability to verify, until I have the ability to draw my own conclusions. But if I was just operating based on the only things that I could verify for myself, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have anything to go off of.
Actually, you would though. You would, because you'd be doing some checking, which let's say I didn't do whilst I was growing up. So had I had your, for example, due diligence thereof, wanting to verify, but you're going to trust, then you're going to fall into my trap. So if I was thinking like you and you said you would go and check, that's what you should be doing and asking questions. But you are free, of course, and indeed to hold the position you are. You're an individual by yourself. You want to do it your way, and that's perfect. All I would say is that you'd be better off asking questions and you'd reach conclusions quicker rather than Gin 48 years later. That's a long time.
I do ask questions, but like so I have very limited resources for what I can like set up and experiment for myself. So the only thing that I can really do is trust, in educational content on like YouTube and reading scientific papers and looking like using the internet and Like that's kind of the only stuff I have.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good.
at some point,
I had that.
at some point in my life, I want to, measure curvature. I want to get a ring light
Yeah.
microscope, but I just can't do that yet. And so I like from what I've seen, online. I've done research into a lot of topics.
Right.
I found that the globe is the logical conclusion, but
Well, but it doesn't. But it doesn't exist, does it? Though it's a logical conclusion, but you haven't verified it or checked it. We've gone out there
yeah,
now
yeah,
to
yeah,
do that, and
yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah,
telling
yeah,
you it doesn't
yeah.
exist.
But
Now, let me just say
so
one thing
I
again. Let me
yeah
just say one thing. One more thing. The other gentleman spoke about the guy from South Africa. He spoke to you about the gravities. Now, remember, the gravity as you think it is at the moment hasn't been proven. That's a theory, and if a theory hasn't been proven, that means it's not the truth. Okay, so you are
oh,
doing a believing, and you are believing in something that hasn't been proven. So it's not the truth. You cannot write it in stone. You can't, take it to the bank, sort of thing. I mean, it's nothing. It's something that we can actually put in the waste bin because it's not been proven. So if you want to believe that, that's your freedom of choice, of course. Okay, and I'll stop there. Sorry, please go on.
yeah, yeah. Actually, sorry, I won't be able to. It's like 2:30 a.m. where I am, so I have to like go to bed here. Um, but it's
Okay.
been a
Well, thanks for
it
your patience anyway.
yeah,
And I
yeah, no,
wish you all the best. I do wish you all the
yeah.
best in your education and your endeavors.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for
Gotta
it's been a
speaking
great
out. Thanks
it's
for
been a
your
great
patience.
conversation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I gotta
got
go,
gotta
watch. After doing one of these, I always have to watch a Dave McKeegan video to like make sure I don't get convinced of the flat Earth. Um,
Well,
yeah.
that's
So
okay. That's
so
okay. Go ahead and get your therapy. Go get your
yeah,
therapy. That's fine.
yeah.
had
Always,
I mean,
always
It's fun.
gotta end one of these with cleaning my mind with like a what's it, McToon, Fight the Flat Earth, Dave McKeegan, any of those,
yeah.
just to
I,
reset.
I've
what, you like it?
I've just
Oh
come back.
man.
Oh,
Hang on. I've just come back from a 5 mile walk, and I was listening to the convex stuff, the full documentary. Okay, so that gives me, that's my therapy as I'm jogging. It's blaring out of my smartphone, so people are hearing about the flat Earth as I'm jogging. So I know what you mean.
Um,
We all do
Yeah.
what we do. Carry on.
just before you roll, man, tip of the hat for you for asking questions. If you're listening to those cats, I'm a little bit surprised that you're amicable enough to come into these rooms and have a chat. I mean, your decorum is what you say, 15 years old,
Yeah.
compared to McToon and the like. Yeah, I mean, your levels of maturity above them. They may have more knowledge, right? But the information and the knowledge is like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You'll work this out
Well,
when you
I
get a
mean,
bit older. It takes a bit of time to
yeah,
get
the
the
thing is,
perspective, but
I don't have enough like knowledge of these things to go on the attack and be like, oh no, you're wrong, you're an idiot, flurf. This is why you're wrong. So I'm just gonna sit
dude.
here and ask questions until until I can understand the model more and understand why you believe what you believe. Um,
Oh, for sure,
I don't
bro.
like
Like,
I
I
don't
don't
come
even
here
know half
I
this
don't
shit.
come here to convince people. I just come here because I'm interested in the topic.
So I got a question for you before you go. Like, or
Yeah.
you don't even need to answer it, just ponder it, I suppose, and maybe come back
Mhm.
and like, if you said you have dreams of entering into the field of physics and studying quantum
Yeah.
particles or whatever it is, I mean, you're probably going to need to make a difficult decision if you've already come across this information and this topic of discussion this early on. It'll be very interesting for a gentleman your age to see what happens and see where you land. I don't know. Would you be willing to sacrifice that potential career for the truth? I suppose is the question I would be wanting
Oh,
to
well, I was
ask you.
talking with
If I was talking to my younger self, maybe like I'd be asking these sort of ponderous questions. Yeah. So I
well, I
don't
mean,
know. Have a think on
I was talking with like Beasticles earlier. We were saying like if I find out the truth and it's all a lie, but I need to this for like the money, I'll just DM the server like a code word or something. Yeah, this is
Oh
yeah,
yeah, cool. I mean,
Zapdos.
what are we supposed to do?
I
Are we
no, if I
do we
DM
get
you
in the
Zapdos,
Batmobile and come rescue you, or like
yeah. If I DM
put out
you
the bat
Zapdos,
signal?
it means that it's all a lie. It's fake.
He's compromised, guys.
I'm
We gotta go
actually
and get him out.
guys. I measured it. These
Hawk,
it's all fake. I found the ether. Yeah,
Hawking's running over him with his little wheelchair, and he's going back and forward.
yeah.
Einstein's
shit,
going
yeah.
after me again. Yeah, using his god lasers from the grave.
Yeah,
to
Einstein's dressing
separate
him
me.
up in his cross-dressing outfits and making him wear heels. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
Anyway.
sir,
yeah,
have a good nap.
yeah. You too.
We're just going to
It's
talk
great.
amongst ourselves until another one of you guys show up and we can argue with you.
Yeah. No, I wait longer, but I mean, I have like a sleep schedule to try and uphold. I mean, I'm not doing very well, but yeah.
But you know what? It
Well,
was
thanks
really nice to talk.
for your presence
It's really
anyway.
nice to talk
Thanks
to
for your
someone who.
presence. And
It's nice. It's nice to talk to someone who's not being literally combative, but more having a back and forth discussion. So it's been great talking to you.
Yeah. You too. See ya.
Cheers, man.
You reckon we get like sort of indoctrinated with the arguing at a later stage? Like if he's 15 and he's just chilling around asking questions, like maybe you start becoming this arrogant sort of like early adulthood or something.